Hey there! Today I thought I'd post a relaxed video in which I share a tarot spread with you, but first I wanted to walk you through the making of a beverage, which is really a Witchy London Fog. This is a drink that I developed for Circle, and which was meant to accompany a pathworking that we were going to be doing for the World card. So essentially this was the tea I made for this particular witch's tea ceremony. If you haven't caught the witch's tea ceremony video, I'll link it in the description. For this particular tea, I wanted to combine representations of the four elements, which are a major feature of world cards as they're depicted across many decks. In the Rider-Waite-Smith, for instance, you have representations of all four elements in each of the corners. And so I wanted a tea that would capture four elements and which, of course, you could experience a couple of different ways over the course of the pathworking. A London Fog, if you've never had it, is essentially an Earl Grey tea latte. And the basil recipe that I'm using here is really just that. It's Earl Grey tea in milk. But of course, I wanted to spice it up a little bit. So what I ended up doing was deciding to add witch hazel to the basic Earl Grey tea. In addition, the classic London Fog recipe tends to include vanilla. So vanilla bean is really what I recommend rather than vanilla extract, but of course, if that's all you have, you can absolutely use that as well. Which means that the four things that are going into the pot at the beginning are aromatic vanilla, for which you may have your own correspondences, but which I think can nicely reflect the element of air. It is, of course, a scent that is ubiquitous and well-loved, one that appears in a large proportion of women's perfumes, a scent that carries and is distinctive. You've got the Earl Grey and the witch hazel, the herbs which combined constitute the element of earth in this recipe, and of course the milk representing water. Now if you're vegan, you can of course sub out the milk for whatever your preferred milk substitute is. Because I'm going to be straining all of this through a French press anyway, I prefer to work with loose leaf while I bring the milk up to a simmer. And you're going to want to simmer this for a good 10 minutes anyway, but don't worry, you'll have plenty to do in the meantime. As a final note, you'll want to use a pot for which you have a bowl, a glass bowl, that can act as a double boiler, and here's why. That last element, fire, we're going to be adding that too, but not directly into the tea. Instead, this component is going to be one that's served on the side, if you will, and which you can add to the tea over the course of drinking it. To make this component, you're going to want to use a high quality, I prefer dark chocolate, and you're going to cut it up fairly finely and melt, let's say 2/3 of that chocolate. The reason you only melt 2/3 of the chocolate is because what you want to do is temper the chocolate. The process of tempering chocolate simply means that once the chocolate has melted and then been brought back down to room temperature, it will re-harden. Now once you've melted 2/3 of the chocolate, remove that from heat. The first step is going to be adding the final ingredient, and that is chili powder, to give a delightful little blast of heat, of spice. Now, depending on how sensitive you are to spicy things, you can modulate the amount of chili powder you add. I like things that are fairly hot myself, and so am being fairly generous with this. I also find that the chocolate really does relax the heat of chili, and as you may know, milk itself is an excellent means of reducing spiciness. So at the end of the day, the amount of heat you get, even from a fairly generous amount of chili powder, is going to be experienced as less intense than if you were to just pour that volume over a dish of grilled vegetables, for instance. Finally, keep in mind that we're actually adding the rest of the chocolate, so you will be diluting the intensity of the chili even further. Now, the reason we're adding the rest of the chocolate like this is, again, to temper that chocolate. By including unmelted chocolate and stirring it in, you're actually re-infusing chocolate crystals that will act as a scaffold for your chocolate to re-harden at room temperature. Now, once all of that chocolate is combined and melted, all that's left to do is to coat some teaspoons with this spicy chocolate and allow that chocolate to harden. It doesn't take terribly long for this to happen. Just about enough time to transfer your now properly simmered tea into a French press or any other implement you will be serving it out of, and then get comfy in whatever space you'll be occupying for the next little bit. So now that I've got my tea, let's move on to the taro spread. And this spread is one I call the "holy shit, what have I done" spread. It's a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's an experience I've no doubt that most of us have gone through. The inspiration for this spread came from a friend of mine who was in the midst of very much that sort of experience. A major decision, even when it's the right one, will often result in a "oh crap, I'm not sure if I made the right decision" response. And in cases like that, it often helps to get a little reinforcement, to be offered a little positive perspective so that we don't merely find ourselves rerunning all of the potentially catastrophic repercussions through our heads over and over without giving any thought or consideration to the upsides and some of the reasons why we ended up making this choice to begin with. The "holy shit, what have I done" spread is therefore a 6-card spread designed to chill you the fuck out. For this spread, I actually start with reading from the bottom left corner and working my way up, a path I think as following the slow climb out of panic mode. Now here I'm using the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot, which is a standard 78-card deck, except it also comes with moon phase cards. And these are cards that I keep in the deck. Often I'll use them as temporal markers, but I also sometimes use them as representatives of archetypal associations reflected in moon phases. The positional definitions for this spread are as follows. The first card represents a facet of your life or the querent's life that you can at last say goodbye to. As I said, the sorts of decisions that are difficult to make and that tend to result in these sorts of "what have I done" experiences are often ones that are the result of some long-standing form of discontent or negativity. And so this first card is really about bringing you or the querent back to ground zero. Why did you make this decision? What was the thing you just wanted done with? What was the major precipitating factor, which you are now, as a result of this decision, going to get to lay to bed? The second card in this spread is the converse in many ways. It is the opportunity at last in bloom, and is meant to reflect a new freedom or opportunity, potential that was being squandered or crushed by that earlier situation, and which is now a path that is open for exploration. If the first card is the thing you were trying to get away from, the second card is the direction you wanted to head or decided to head in. There may have been many avenues of escape, but you chose this particular one, and this is the reason why, the hope that it offered in this sort of realm. The third card represents the strength you possess that will most help you in seeing this through. And ideally, this card serves as a reminder to the querent that they do in fact possess the capacity to make the path they have chosen work, that their own personal qualities can be leveraged against any challenges they may face on this path, and that the often catastrophic view that they're currently seeing their decision from is one that is a lie, one that sort of pretends that they don't possess these strengths, these characteristics that do in fact improve their odds of a happy outcome. The fourth position is the challenge that looms larger than it is. This card is meant to encapsulate one of the particular challenges that the querent is afraid of facing while walking down this new avenue. And in this card, I think you can also explore why it is they're particularly afraid of this one thing. A question whose answer I feel is also reflected in the third card, that strength you possess that will help most in seeing you through. Position 5 is the thing you'll be asked to give that you will not miss. Now, I included this card because although we all know that there are no decisions that don't have repercussions, and those repercussions are rarely 100% positive, we do tend to forget that some of the things that we may be asked or forced to sacrifice are not ones that in the end we will mind letting go of. And so in addition to reminding the querent that some of these things that seem like sacrifices are not ones you actually care about at the end of the day, it can also help narrow down which of their concerns are ones that are being blown out of proportion in their mind, and what thing of perhaps popular value they are only attributing value to because there's a risk that they'll have to give it up. Finally, the sixth card is the support you'll find around you through all of it. And here ultimately is the reminder that the querent is never alone in this decision. The querent is not reliant upon exclusively their own abilities, their own strengths. They are not operating in a vacuum. The people who surround them and who care about them, the realities of their environment, can all aid them in achieving what it is they're attempting to achieve. And so in this card we find one of the forms that support takes, and upon which the querent will be able to rely as they embark on this new adventure in their life that took guts and hard decisions to reach. As ever, I hope you found this video entertaining and useful. Do try this tea, it is amazing. Incidentally, go ahead and drink a bit of this tea before stirring in the spoon. As the Witchy London Fog melts the chilly chocolate, you'll find that the flavor is transformed and really walks you through different landscapes. Until next time, I wish you all the best and an absolutely lovely weekend.